Chapter 889. Doflamingo Campbell knew that Jiang Hai was strong, but he didn't know that Jiang Hai was this strong. His physical fitness was 8 times the limit of an ordinary person's body. Plus, he had learned Bosho Jitsu before. If Jiang Hai was a rich man, he would be a killing machine on the battlefield. If he was placed on an ancient battlefield, he would be a match for 10,000 people. It could be said that even if Xiang Yu or Lu Bu were reborn, they would still be no match for Jiang Hai. This was the reality. At this time, in Jiang Hai's eyes, these experimental subjects were like clay chickens and pottery dogs. He could deal with them however he wanted. Under the scattering of the staff, half of the hands that surrounded him were instantly sent flying. In less than a minute, only a third of them were left standing. If this had happened to an ordinary person, they would have collapsed long ago. However, these people were crazy. There was no fear in their eyes. Therefore, even though they knew that Jiang Hai was strong, they still rushed forward and were beaten down by Jiang Hai. Doflamingo Campbell was also afraid when he saw how strong Jiang Hai was. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos to escape, but unfortunately he was kicked back by Jiang Hai. If this guy went out now, who knew if he would cause more trouble for him? Jiang Hai didn't want any more accidents to happen. It was almost dawn. With this thought, Jiang Hai swung the stick even faster. In less than a minute, the remaining 1/3 of the test subjects followed in the footsteps of the people in front of them. They lay on the ground, unable to fight. Clang. Jiang Hai threw away the stick in his hand and looked at Doflamingo Campbell, who was still trying to crawl towards the door. He curled his lips and walked over. When Jiang Hai reached for him, the guy suddenly turned around and stabbed Jiang Hai with a needle in his hand. Jiang Hai didn't say anything and just kicked the guy's wrist. After breaking the guy's wrist, Jiang Hai pulled the guy's other hand and brought him to the test bench. Then Jiang Hai directly pressed him there. Jiang Hai didn't say anything and just kicked the guy's wrist. "Kill me, kill me, kill me." Doflamingo Campbell kept shouting as he looked at Jiang Hai. However, Jiang Hai looked at him and didn't do anything. Instead, he patted his face. "I won't kill you. If I kill you, how will I explain what happened here? I have evidence here. I want to clear my name, so you just stay here and wait for the police to come." After Jiang Hai finished speaking, he tied all the belts on the test bench on Doflamingo Campbell's body. After he couldn't move at all, Jiang Hai walked straight out of the room. Ignoring Doflamingo Campbell's roar behind him, Jiang Hai breathed a sigh of relief. The problem here was finally solved. Next, he had to deal with Bruce David. After leaving the laboratory, Jiang Hai walked to the elevator. When he arrived at the elevator, he found that Lois Knightley was already there waiting for him. Jiang Hai saw that she didn't say much. After entering the elevator again, he went to the first floor. Perhaps because of the stop just now, there weren't many mental patients on the first floor, and they weren't aggressive. They were all pretending to be doctors and nurses. Moreover, with Lois Knightley, an acquaintance, leading the way, no one came to trouble Jiang Hai. The two soon arrived at the dining room, but there was no one in the dining room at this time. After Jiang Hai and Lois Knightley passed through the dining room, they entered the kitchen. But as soon as they entered, Jiang Hai felt his stomach churning. Fortunately, he didn't eat lunch or dinner, or he would have vomited when he came in. The entire kitchen was now covered in blood. In the corner of the kitchen there were many heads. These people's heads were obviously cut off not long ago. They all died with their eyes wide open with disbelief and disbelief. Their severed limbs were placed in the kitchen at this time. In the middle of the kitchen, there was a white-bearded man standing there dismembering a woman. Looking at his familiar knife skills, Jiang Hai was sure that he had done this more than once. Jiang Hai could still bear it at this time, but after Lois Knightley walked in, she couldn't bear it anymore. Don't forget that she also ate the food made in the kitchen these days. She instantly leaned against the door frame and vomited. It was really disgusting. "What are you two doing in here? The kitchen is important. Get out." Hearing Lois Knightley vomiting, the bearded man also raised his head. When he saw the white coat on Lois Knightley, he frowned and scolded loudly. "You're Bruce David?" Looking at the person in front of him, he looked very similar to the photo in the information Jiang Hai found, so he couldn't help but ask him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the man also raised his head. "You're looking for me?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Bruce David asked with some doubts. Hearing that he was Bruce David, Jiang Hai nodded, then took a few steps forward, kicked the man's knife away, and knocked him to the ground with a punch. In this situation, Jiang Hai couldn't ask him anything, so he pulled him out. After coming to the restaurant, Jiang Hai also closed the kitchen door. After there was no blood, no severed limbs, and no severed heads in front of him, Jiang Hai calmed down a little. He asked Lois Knightley to guard outside. Jiang Hai went to the sink next to the table and got a glass of water. This was originally for the staff to wash their hands after eating. Jiang Hai walked to Bruce David and poured the water on his head. The man woke up with a splash of water. "You, what are you doing, you bastard? I'm going to eat you." As soon as he opened his eyes, Bruce David screamed loudly, but unfortunately, Jiang Hai didn't give him the opportunity to do so. But when the large force entered the base, they found that there was no one in the base. Not many people knew about this. Among them, the Minister of the Navy, Forrestal, suddenly went crazy in 1949, and then committed suicide in a mental hospital. What he said when he went crazy was that there was actually Aryan City under the South Pole. Listening to Bruce David's words, Jiang Hai also fell into contemplation. His consciousness told him that this was nonsense. But he knew about the dragon-shaped badge. If he didn't look at it, he would feel that he was not very transparent. "Young man, I advise you not to try to go there easily because it is really terrible. If you are not careful, you can really die there. And if you want to go, it is best to prepare now. In the South Pole, you can only survive outside in December, January, and February every year. Other than these 3 months, the South Pole is a forbidden area." Looking at Jiang Hai's hesitant eyes, Bruce David also said with a smile, "It seems that he still remembers the South Pole." Chapter 890. "Okay, you sit in the car and don't move. I'll call the police." Looking at Lois Knightley sitting in the passenger seat, Jiang Hai said seriously. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Lois Knightley also nodded, then put on Jiang Hai's coat, put on the hood and laid down on the chair. Seeing that Lois Knightley was ready, Jiang Hai also pulled out the car key, got out of the car and walked to the police station in front of him. After asking Bruce David about the dragon-shaped badge, Jiang Hai took Lois Knightley out of the asylum. After getting into his car, Jiang Hai rushed down the mountain. Of course, after getting a signal, he first called Chi Jie and the others who had been very anxious at home, telling them that he was safe and asking them to call Moses Adams to come over immediately. Also, it was estimated that their plan to enter the mountain would have to be pushed back a little because this was not a small matter. Then he drove directly to the town not far away. Outside the town's police station, Jiang Hai also parked the car. After talking to Lois Knightley, he walked into the police station. "Hello, what's the matter?" Seeing Jiang Hai walk into the police station, the police officer on duty at night also sat up and looked at Jiang Hai with some doubts. It was almost 5 o'clock at this time, which meant that the sky was already bright. Jiang Hai had seen the sun at 4 o'clock in Los Angeles, but this police officer was quite sleepy. There were only more than 500 people in this town, and no one would come to the police station at night. At least this was the first time he encountered it when he was on duty. "Hello, my name is Jiang Hai. I have a manor in Winthrop. You should be able to find information about me on the internet. What I'm going to say next, you have to immediately report to the state police." Jiang Hai looked at the sleepy young man and said with a serious face. Hearing Jiang Hai's serious words, the police officer also looked at him seriously. "Today, oh no, yesterday I went to the Jushan Psychiatric Hospital on the mountain. A few days ago, because the signal tower was blown down, the prisoners and patients there have rebelled. They killed all the guards, doctors and nurses and disguised themselves as these people. At the same time they killed the guards, doctors and nurses. And these days they have been eating these people. It was not easy for me to escape. Here is the evidence, hurry up and call your boss." Looking at the policeman in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a serious face. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, the police officer here was completely stunned. The news of lunatics attacking the mental hospital and eating people made him a little overwhelmed. It wasn't until Jiang Hai looked at him in a daze and knocked on the table in front of him that he finally reacted. Then he immediately picked up the phone and called the police chief of this town. The police chief, who was still asleep, was also shocked after hearing this news. He immediately called the state police. "This is really big news." After Jiang Hai called the police, he went to the police station to sit and wait for the officials to arrive. In less than half an hour, all the police in the town were in place, and then 20 people went to seal the mountain. Then more than an hour later, the police in the city arrived. This time there were more than 100 people and there was also an armed police force. Well, Jiang Hai didn't know what the American armed police were called, but the armed police in his home were the Maritime Patrol Team. After watching the video provided by Jiang Hai, the head of the armed police was also very surprised. Such an ugly thing naturally had to be covered up as soon as possible, so he also told Jiang Hai, hoping that he wouldn't easily reveal it to the media. But he also understood that such a big thing couldn't be covered up purely by covering it up. He could only hope that this matter would be solved within the police force. Jiang Hai didn't care about this anyway, he didn't expect the exposure bonus to make money. Then more than 100 heavily armed police attacked the mental hospital at 10 o'clock in the morning. After entering, they really saw everything that Jiang Hai said. At that time, almost all the police vomited, and the mental patients were quite obedient. A small number of them resisted, but in the face of these heavily armed police, their resistance was meaningless. Soon, the mental hospital was captured, and in the basement they also found the mastermind, Doflamingo Campbell. The whole operation only went on for about 10 minutes, and the mental hospital was wiped out. But even so, it still alarmed the media. After the police finished the battle, when they went down the mountain, they found that the media had unknowingly surrounded the mountain. Seeing that the situation was not good, Jiang Hai, who came as a guide, disappeared into the crowd immediately, then got into his car and returned home with Louisa Knightley. He knew that he was breaking the law by taking Louisa Knightley away, but he had to do it because if he let her stay here, she might be beaten or something. And most importantly, if she went to a normal mental hospital, if Jiang Hai wanted to overturn her case, the rich man could kill her first. At that time, it would be useless even if Jiang Hai wanted to overturn the case for a dead person. Therefore, Jiang Hai still took Louisa Knightley away. Of course, he didn't take her away directly. When he left, he also called Moses Adams. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams said that he would fly to Los Angeles immediately. At the same time, he also pulled a line for Jiang Hai. After this incident, Jiang Hai would donate $1 million to the California Police Department. Of course, a donation was a donation, and now Jiang Hai was protecting the witness. Chapter 893. Woof woof woof. With the harsh barking of a dog, Jiang Hai and his team, who were searching around, couldn't help but turn the steering wheel and rush toward the place where the dog barked. Not long after, in front of Jiang Hai, a collapsed cave appeared. This is it. Looking at the gravel outside the cave and the railway track that had been covered by grass, Wallace Shelley held the GPS and said excitedly. Hearing her words, the others also smiled. This was the third day since Jiang Hai and the others entered the wilderness. On the first day they slept, and on the second day it was already the fourth day since they set out, and on the third day since they entered the wilderness. In these 3 days they could only roughly determine a radius of 10 kilometers. In other words, the mine was about 314 square kilometers in size. It was really not an easy task to find it, and this was achieved by using a lot of new technology. Wallace Shelley even hacked into the satellite to get the location, but even so, it took 3 days to find it. It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon today, and it was thanks to Jiang Hai's 2 dogs that they found the location. As the 2 cars drove over, little Huang and Xiao Bai had already appeared at the entrance of the cave. Looking at their anxious looks, Jiang Hai felt that there seemed to be something in this cave. After gesturing to everyone got out of the car with their weapons. Jiang Hai went to the front of the cave and looked inside. Jiang Hai couldn't help but stare. This was because what appeared here was a bear. However, it wasn't a big bear but a small one. It looked like it was less than a year old because of its fluffy appearance. It was quite cute. Jiang Hai used to read novels about farming at home. In those novels, the protagonist would raise a bear. However, Jiang Hai didn't want to raise a bear. So after seeing this little bear, his first thought was whether it was enough to eat. This is a North American grizzly bear, a protected animal, and it is still a cub. Accumulate some virtue. But unfortunately, Qi Jie seemed to see Jiang Hai's thoughts. After rolling her eyes at him, she walked to the front of the cave and looked at the little bear and said, "The North American grizzly bear is actually a kind of brown bear, but its hair is gray and it doesn't look so cute. The number of bears in the Sierra Nevada is not particularly small, second only to the number of black bears, but this is only the official statement." Jiang Hai only saw this one along the way. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai felt that he can't eat this bear meat. I don't know why this little guy appeared here. Such a big guy should be guarded by a mother bear. Looking at the little bear, she hesitated and said, but just after she finished speaking, a bear's roar came from the distance. Later we added 100,000 bottles. The initial price was $800 a bottle. Yes, the red wine you are drinking now we sell it ourselves. The initial price was $800, and the later price was $1,200 a bottle. Looking at the crowd in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Hearing that the red wine they were drinking now was worth $1,200 a bottle, The Turner brothers couldn't help but look at each other. Even Penelope couldn't help but speed up her drinking. She just felt that this red wine was delicious, and she heard that it was brewed by Jiang Hai and the others. She thought that it would only sell for a few dozen dollars or at most $100, but she didn't expect that the difference was 10 times less than what she thought. Looking at the wine in front of her, to be honest, she didn't quite understand, but since Jiang Hai could sell it, it meant that this wine was indeed worth the price. Our goal is $2,000 a bottle. This wine has such potential. I can predict that we will be able to sell it for this price within 3 years. Looking at the surprised expressions of the crowd in front of him, Dulles Gerard also stood up with a smile and said loudly to the crowd. Last year he was the most embarrassed one here, but now he felt that he was the most dazzling one. Although we've only produced 150,000 bottles of wine this year, these 150,000 bottles have brought me a fortune of $160 million. Most importantly, we still have 2 million bottles of wine of this grade in our cellar. If we calculate it at $1,000 a bottle, that's $2 billion. So, Mr. Dulles and Mr. O'Connor Murphy, your rewards this year won't be any less than the average person's. I'll give you 2% of the profits, so that's $2 million in total. If you split it evenly, each of you will get $6 million. After Jiang Hai finished speaking, he took out 2 red checks with $1,600,000 written on them from his pocket. Looking at the checks in front of them, Dulles Gerard and O'Connor Murphy both smiled. This money was their reward, and this year they could straighten their backs and receive this sum of money. They bowed to Jiang Hai like a European gentleman and took the checks. Then they smiled and put them in their pockets. They would fly back to Europe tomorrow morning, and this sum of money was enough for them to hold their heads high in their respective families. Next, it's time for the new brothers. Because you came a little late this year, you didn't receive an official bonus. I've prepared $100,000 for each of you. This is the year-end bonus I'm giving you. As long as you serve our manor well next year, I believe that there will be 7 more millionaires here next year. What do you think? After giving out the big heads, Jiang Hai couldn't disappoint the newcomers, so he took out another $100,000 check from his pocket and put it in front of them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the 7 newcomers, whether they were fishermen or cowboys, all shouted loudly. Although more than $1 million had nothing to do with them this year, it was also good to get $100,000. It should be known that an annual income of $50,000 was considered middle class in the United States. Now they had a bonus of $100,000. What was this called? This was called a high-income group. From this, it could be seen that their choice to come to Jiang Hai's place was not wrong. Jiang Hai was a good employer worthy of their lives. Next, it's time to party. Seeing the crowd shouting because of the money, Jiang Hai also picked up a glass of beer next to him, raised it high and shouted loudly at the same time. Hearing Jiang Hai's voice, the others also shouted loudly. Whether they were drunk or not, at least they were now floating. Looking at Jiang Hai's high-spirited appearance among the crowd, Qi Jie, and the others who were gathered in the distance also laughed. Following such a man, it's hard to say if there will be times when they will regret it. Especially Qi Jie, Luya, Feng Yunqian and Ai Xiaoxi, but every time they saw Jiang Hai, this kind of thought would disappear. They must have this man. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.